And in 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, welcome to the platform.
We're back. It's like we never left.
It's been a little while, but it was needed because
It happened.
sometimes in life you just need to do a little break. We prepared nothing, and that's how we like it. So, why don't we go ahead and just play paper rock scissors? So you have to come up with the first subject.
That's
matter.
fine.
Just on one. All right, 1, 2, shoot. Ready? 1, 2, shoot. Okay.
I've never played paper, rock, scissors to intentionally to try to lose. That was tough.
No, I think the winner chooses. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, so what's been up, man? Ooh, dang it. What's
Okay, well, here's something interesting. It's like no matter what you learn, you always kind of have to come back to a point of neutrality. It's like, and like I think the example I could use for that is, let's just say you get very in a positive mindset, and then you're going, and then something always has to happen that brings you back to a state of, wow, why am I back to that neutral state again where maybe I'm a little negative today? And that's just a kind of like a simple example, but it always kind of seems like a game of chess. You can play a very complicated, very long game, let's just say, very complex moves, everybody's racking their brain. At the end of the game, everything gets reset and starts over. So it's kind of like that, but not that, because you're not always going back to being a 10-year-old who can't remember any of your wisdom. But it always seems like, since the world is a probabilistic place, that things can happen at any given time, there's always that element. So, and I guess the reason why I'm saying that is because after doing this platform for a little over a year now, or around a year, you forget certain things you learned and that you applied and that were great, and then other things get substituted or replaced, and so that's that. But
well, along that train of thought, that's actually that would have been the content of the discussion that I wanted to bring up tonight, is just how I don't think it matters what your status is, what your bank account is, what your success is. It's all irrelevant when it comes to your state of mind and the fact that problems exist at every level, at every turn. And the way Jordan Peterson explains it is that you have to trust that that creation is good, that the way that the world is set up, the way that existence is set up, survival, all that it is inherently good, and that we have to have the best attitude that we can, even when we're faced with those problems, and it doesn't matter. And at least in my experience, and maybe I'm ignorant because I don't have the status or the success or the wealth or whatever variable you want to put in there, which I don't think I really don't think it matters, because you see very popular, successful, wealthy people that are miserable, taking their own lives, divorce, etc. So you couple what Jordan Peterson said with the big idea is that everything is good not everything is good, but like life is good. Life, to live, to be breathing is a good thing. And so if you have breath in your lungs, make the most of it and have a good attitude. Even it's almost like take the mind of Christ who went to the cross, even though he didn't want to, and he did it with obedience and didn't complain, etc. And you couple that idea with what it might have been Mark Manson. I forget the author of I think The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck or something like that. And he said that basically at any level of life or any state that you're in, you're always going to be trading one set of problems for another. So you think about that, like let's just take finances for example. If you struggle with finances in the sense that you don't have enough free time to do what you want because you got to keep working, maybe a job that you don't even like to provide, so you don't have enough money to have the free time, or you don't have enough money you're struggling to make ends meet, just to hit bare bones or whatever. If that's your problem and that's like always on your mind, like, man, if I had more money, then if you had more money, you would acquire, or you would encounter a new set of problems, and they would be just as real and just as problematic as the other ones, but just in a different.
Yeah, it's like, what problem do you want to have? Christ, what do I eat today? Or, geez, which business do I sell today?
Well, I think it's a lot more. I mean, yes, that makes sense, but there's so many problems. I mean, for example, I know a lot of wealthy people, and I bet you it would be pretty darn hard, maybe even impossible, to have a lot of money and not get anxious or some type of negative energy when it comes to that money going to places that you don't have any control, like taxes, income tax, federal, all the money that the government takes from, the income. I mean, the more you get taxed or the more you make, the higher tax bracket you become, you fit into. And then it's like, man, you're making.
Unless you're the 1% who don't pay taxes.
There you go. You're making millions of dollars, and you're getting taxed 40%.
Sure.
And then you're like,
yeah.
Then you have that problem,
But that's another example. It's like, what would you rather be? The millionaire who gets taxed 40%, or the person who makes $20,000 or $35,000 a year and gets taxed 40%?
Well, here's the.
Even though it doesn't work like
here's
that.
Here's the point. I think this is the takeaway from that, is it doesn't matter which one of those positions you're in to have a positive mindset. You can be in either.
You can be in the slums and have a positive mindset, right?
Yeah. And so, I think that's the key is making the most of what you have right now. Like making the most of here and now. With, and we talked about this, but with the hopes and desire and discipline to move forward toward the goal that you want. Another thing that, money, just one thing that it presents, or it could present, is if you have a lot of money, trusting people becomes an issue. When we were out in California and I worked for Andrew, I mean, he didn't know who his real friends were.
Right.
I mean, he didn't know what girls were genuinely interested in him.
That's not a fun life, right?
Yeah. I mean, think about that.
Cool,
And you listen to music, and if depending on who you listen to, a lot of artists will say in their songs like this dynamic of friends coming out of the woodworks, once you become successful. People that wrote you off before now calling you, and people that didn't give you any time or attention are now, wanting to be in proximity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, man, that's difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, I think the content or the topic would be, what do you do? Like, how do you thrive in those times where you come back to neutral or starting over? How do you keep your head up and keep persevering and enduring the times?
I was listening to an interview with it was at some university, and they were talking about Carl Jung, the I think it's a psychologist, and he they were saying that he said that one of the things that he discovered was being able to analyze his dreams, because he said that your dreams were your subconscious trying to tell you something about yourself, for lack of a better explanation. And he said that you gotta keep doing it, because it's something that you actually get better at, which is funny because it seems like such an abstract thing that you think that there is no getting better at it. You think
at
that
interpreting your dreams or
yes,
analyzing
your dreams and understanding them. It seems like such a kind of like a vague metaphysical thing where it's like, check, where it's just like you don't really study it. It just happens and you forget it. But he's a person who actually studied his dreams and would journal them, and then he got really good at analyzing them and decoding them, I guess you could say. And so taking that idea and applying it to getting good at the skill of knowing how to manage your mind when no matter really what's going on. I guess you could kind of like draw a similarity between that and like stoicism, So Carl Jung, I should play the video in this podcast, the one that I sent you. It's a couple-minute clip where Carl Jung talks about the external and internal world. And I really, really, really like that video because he says, I don't know how well you remember it, but he's like, if you look around in the world, you see things, and we, the external person will, the person who thinks of the world externally is like a well-based individual, like that's how they maneuver themselves in the world. And then somebody who is very internal, like they have their fantasies, they're thinking, and when you think in moving images, and it's like you can kind of brush that off and say, well, that's not real, but the thing is, it is a fact. Like it is a fact that we have an imagination, that we can envision things. And so, and I love that he says, coming from him especially, that a person who is very internal is just as well based as a person who is very external based. So for example, if somebody who's very like status driven, things driven, and they're always projecting, they're always seeing how they see themselves in the world, and how people see them, and so that'd be like an externally driven person. And so it's kind of fascinating because you can kind of think of it like this. Like, let's just say somebody lives in a field somewhere, and every day they meditate internally on their life, let's just say, and that you can manifest anything. Your life could be anything if you just sit and internalize it and you envision whatever you want. And imagine if you did that every day. Like, think about that. Imagine if you did that every day for like 3 hours, and you envision yourself living on a beach or something. And we can talk about superficial things, and you do that every day for 3 hours, and it's like, okay, well, this person is just delusional.
Mm-hmm.
But if a person gets really good at that, then is it really an illusion? Is he really just delusional, or is it something that if this person is actually having some kind of like positive neurochemical reaction, and maybe gets, and this is probably going to take it too far, but maybe gets good at making that the sole purpose, and never actually trying to manifest anything physical out of it, then is that person just as well based as the external person? And we kind of do that, though. Like, think about people who, I mean, actually, no, everybody does it. Now that I think about it, everybody lives their life, and then they have their they have a projection of themselves in the future. And how many people never actually achieve whatever they envision themselves to be, or how they think the world sees them?
Mm-hmm.
And so you can live in a state of delusion your entire life, but if you're not, I guess if you're good enough at tricking yourself, then you kind of always live in a state of delusion, but it's real.
Yeah.
And so anyway, the whole point of that is like being able to internalize. Okay, so it's like this. It's like being managed well enough internally that the external world won't shatter your foundation. You know, so like people, for example, who lose all their money in a bad business deal, and then they go blow their heads off. You know, so it's like,
yeah,
it's like, well, what that person was definitely an externally based person. It was like, here's an effect that happened in the real world, and since that was where I had all of my, I guess
identity.
you could say, identity wrapped up in it. The identity shattered. Now it's like, okay, you're nothing now, so you might as well turn your physical body into nothing, since you're done. You know, so I think that's extremely powerful thing, and especially coming from somebody like Carl Jung, who I started to really like respect recently after watching his videos, and I haven't read any of his literature yet, but I want to. And I think it's fascinating. So the whole point is this: don't just dismiss what's going on up here, and we're talking fantasies, we're talking whatever it is that. I think everything that happens in here, that's what orients you, man. So, I think that's a big deal, because I would have to say that we're very externally, even though I just said that we're all like internally based. Ultimately, we still are at a time, at least in the evolution of our species, we're extremely externally focused.
Yeah.
I mean, we are, man. I mean, look at us. We're just going nuts, especially now with tech and social media and just status and cars and houses, and just observing other people and getting the vibes off people when you walk into a room or something. It's just it's so obvious, you know. And did we progress in evolution? Is that something that has rapidly been changing over the past couple of thousand years? I mean, I don't know. You look at the Egyptians, and they were adorned with their gold and status, and it was like, well, that existed then too, at least according to history and what the books say. So it's like, I mean, look at nature. You know, it's like, look at the birds of paradise, let's just say. I just recently watched a video on that, and it's like the female bird's going to pick the best adorned male, you know, the ones with the biggest, fluffiest feathers and with the loudest brightest colors. It's like, okay, so are we really that much more advanced than your bird, who can, you know, has like 3 brain cells, let's just say? So Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, I struggle with that personally because I view myself as being borderline. What were you gonna say? Borderline, like,
Schizophrenic.
yeah. Well, what? What did you say?
Schizophrenic.
What did you say? So like, if here's a line, and on one side of it is the lowest healthy, and on the other side of it is the lowest unhealthy.
Physically or like mentally?
Both. And then, on that side of the line, you're extremely unhealthy, and on this side of the line, you're extremely healthy. But the line is like neutral.
Okay. Yeah.
Like you don't want to cross the line because then you're in the negative side. So I would say that I'm closer to the line than I want to be with being delusional. Like what kind of like how you just articulated it, because I would say that I am, of those two positions that you presented, let's just say external and internal as the positions, I would say that I feel like I am both. I have a good portion of both, because I'm very externally driven, but in the same time, I'm very internally at peace, and I'm in my head a lot throughout the day, and I can relate a lot to the person that I'll shut that off after this, that fantasizes, and then because of what the body does, and the chemicals and the endorphins and just the feeling you get after you fantasize can almost be like a state of being content, almost like you did it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And that's not good.
No, it's not, because it's almost like almost like an evolutionary like trick. I think we might have played on. Go ahead. Yeah.
All right. What were you saying about the trick?
What you said is great, because it's like,
I know it is, dude. I said it.
it's like, it's almost as if nature played a nasty trick on us by giving us the imagination. Because
man,
if we can delude ourselves or lose ourselves in our fantasies, and they feel real, and then we come out of it and we feel great, it's like, but your reality never changed. And it's like, you can look at it as good or not good. Either the not good part is your fantasies is not matching up to reality, so eventually your depression's on its way, because you're gonna eventually have to evaluate your reality and say, everything I've been imagined, it doesn't exist, I can't touch it, here's my reality, and that sucks.
If
that's the negative side of it.
If you don't like your reality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like, you go throughout your day and you're like, hey, things are cool, or they could be horrible. I mean, of course, like if somebody's living an extremely horrible reality, then yeah, that'd be even worse. But let's just say your reality is like, hey man, there's people who have it a lot worse, but I still would like to have it better, which I'm sure is what everybody does. I mean, it's like, who sits there and says, oh, I guess there are some people who sit there and say, my life is going to be like this for forever now, and I'm done. I mean, like, look at retired people. Somebody who is 75 years old, and they've been sitting on the couch every day, and they do the same thing over and over again. But I think that's somebody who's just like, probably like semi gave up. They're settling for they're settling for less because they realize, man, it's really hard to just keep pushing, and so that's not good either. But so the bad side is that your fantasies, your reality is never matching up to your fantasies, so you're getting screwed in that department. But it could also be a good thing because you're you're giving a tool to be able to possibly project into the future, because it's like your reality changes, okay, through experience. Let's just say or circumstantial. You go somewhere and you meet somebody and they um, offer you position at their awesome company somewhere because they like you. And it's like, okay, well that's that's a chance thing. And so because of your circumstance, just the chance you were in the right place at the right time and all that, that's whatever. But then you have this tool built inside you that you can actually project into a future that is is a lot more appealing to you.
Mm-hmm.
Because so what's better though? What's better? It's like, would you rather be like I don't know. I don't know if a dog's brain works like this, but would you rather be, hypothetically, to say, if a dog never did project into the future, beyond like knowing that if you like like there's this dog where it knows that every time it goes outside and it comes back, it's gonna get a treat. It knows that, so it's always scratching at the door. It doesn't ask for a treat. It just scratches at the door because it no, and it happens, and it's like, got my treat. But how many degrees into the future can a dog think,
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, well, what's better for the dog? Or what's better for a person? To have that dog-like mentality? And I'm just saying dog because I'm assuming this is the extent of a dog's like imagination. But
I think,
or being able to imagine infinitely possibilities and then evaluate and say after 2 years, like, gosh, I didn't do any of that stuff that I envisioned. I'm still sitting right here. It's like that. I think that causes a little bit of what do they call it? Cognitive dissonance. No.
yeah, probably. And I don't know that this answers the end all be all, but I think it's pretty darn accurate. But it's pretty far out there. I don't know how well grounded it is in scripture, but Jordan Peterson makes a case for what happened when Adam and Eve ate the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Mm-hmm. And simply put, it was consciousness. And I can just completely see that reality and see why having this consciousness that we have, this awareness, is a curse. Because it's, like, think about it. A dog doesn't care. He's not like.
But dogs do get depressed. That's another funny thing too. It's like when dogs are left alone, they're just like they know my master's not here to hang out with me. This really sucks.
Yeah.
Now I gotta wait. Probably the dog doesn't know time, but it's like it feels like a long time before, or it's gonna be a while before my master gets here. Especially when it's routine.
We have no idea what a dog feels. Right? Sad, whatever. Excited, tail wagging, like there are signs, physical signs that we can.
We have an idea.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
me and you, like, we're not experts in it.
Well, no, I'm just saying human beings, like, we can only, connect the dots, but until we become a dog, we don't know what their mind is.
Yeah, like for 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so my first response to that, first thought was, that's great because we were designed to be in relationship, and to have a master and then get separated or lose him or her, and then to desire that, is and to desire it, and then to know that you don't have it, and then to be aware of it to some degree as a dog, and then to cope, sure, like to be sad, or whatever, you would categorize that existence.
Yeah, and don't forget we're talking about a domesticated dog, which it just. By the way, are you done, or do you have more to add?
Well, no. What I was going to say is, the dog thing. I mean, that's a side thing,
Yeah.
but the curse.
Yeah.
You think about it.
Curse of consciousness.
So I have been thinking about this a lot lately, and by lately I mean like the last 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
Well, I mean the lately wasn't the that wasn't
I
the
thought you were gonna say years, like 2 or 3 years.
No,
that was
no.
just funny, but yeah. I mean, that is still a while to be
I've been
pondering a thought.
yeah. So it's a new thought,
right.
and I've been thinking about it a lot. And when you hear the thought, you're gonna be like, yeah, that is something interesting that you would think a lot about that. But it's this idea of, okay, we are having a conversation right now, assuming that everybody on the planet is like us to some degree, in the sense that they want more. They envision a future.
Yeah.
And that they project a future. And I was thinking about this. Somebody came. I don't know what it was. Somebody. Maybe I had an encounter with somebody, and it just seems like they are completely content with the way their life is, and it's nothing grandiose. It's not like it's just one single job that who knows where it's going to take them. There maybe, and let's just generalize, this is just a person. I don't even know who I'm talking about, but they're in a job that they don't even know what the ceiling is. Like they don't know if they can even rise to a better position, or if they want to, because they're content and their bills are being paid. They're married, they have kids, they have vehicles that drive, they have a roof over their heads. Like, and let's just do this.
Living the dream.
Yeah. Well, let's just make this a little bit more tangible. We both know somebody, and it doesn't matter. Anybody can relate to this, but we both know somebody that is married and has a kid and lives in a trailer park. And the husband and wife seem completely content with where they're at in life. And especially if you look back, and they were addicted to heroin and other things. And so they got clean, and then they were given the trailer by in-laws or their, one of their parents or whatever. And so it was it was like going from heroin and that destruction to now being clean and having a place to call home that is your home, that's very manageable, is probably a great thing for them. That's maybe that to them is like what we, how we cast our vision for our future.
Sure, yeah. It's all relative.
Yeah, relative. But my point is, I am in contact with this person often, and man, it just seems like he always seems to be in a good mood, never sad, depressed, angry, whatever. And never heard any talk of future at all, like zero. And I wonder if there are people that are just wired that way, that they don't.
I definitely think so.
And so here's the better question: is like, instead of what would you rather be, the dog or the human? It's like, what would you rather be? The person that. Let's just say this, and I'm not saying this about the person that we know, because they're not this way at all, but let's just say simple-minded, like really just simple-minded, basic.
Right.
And that's all they know. Like they just
Yeah.
have no desire at
Right.
all.
It's almost as if they're not even at all
Aware.
aware of it.
Yes.
And so it's funny because you say like, well, would you rather be that person? But we think of it as in terms of would we rather be that person, but using the mental thinking we have now. So it's like, well, no
Yes.
way. But
Yeah.
it's like, well, wait a minute. If you were, you would never think like that anymore.
Exactly.
So like,
Yes.
you'd be like a rock on a riverbed. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
would you rather be a rock on a riverbed? You'd think of nothing. You are nothing. It's like, oh yeah. But
So I think the answer to that question would be, I think the philosophical and correct answer to that would be to love the position that you're in now and to not want to be anything other than what you are, and to look at it as a gift, and not compare the two, and say, well, regardless of, even if I had that choice, or regardless of the hypothetical, like this is me now, and so
yeah, for sure.
so
I mean, that's hugely important. Otherwise, no matter what happens, if you're not trained well in that at all, then you're always looking into the future. And no matter what happens, or comparing yourself to your future self.
I was going to say to others, like the hypothetical, like, oh, what if I was that person and I just, like I didn't have to worry about all this,
Yeah. So it's like, if you and maybe this is exactly, you have to apply the same type of tactic as Carl Jung used when he said he got better, and it became a skill to learn how to identify what your dreams are saying to you. And so it's like a skill. You have to get good at being content where you are, with looking forward to the future, having a fantasy that you're going to live out, knowing how to be good, knowing how to work towards that, knowing how to be content with your past. I mean, gosh, it's so complicated to be a human being.
It sucks.
It's so complicated, It's like, I mean, at least the good thing is every now and then we can get lost in something, If it's like, even right now doing this, it's like, hey, this is cool. Like, I'm not ready to blow my brains out. I don't feel like I'm missing it. I'm not like, oh my gosh, I could be in the Caribbean right now on a sailboat and or sword fishing on a yacht somewhere. It's like, you gotta know, because the good times always come and pass. Like, it won't be long before we're on a skiing trip somewhere, or we're doing something that's just completely exhilarating and we're laughing our butt off. And so, but that's like, you have to experience life in order to build those skills. It's like, how you have kids. Are your kids ever like, man, I'm so bored, I'm so bored. It's like, gosh, when was the last time? I can't remember the last time I was bored. If I'm sitting there doing something that's not very exciting, you just do it. If it's like sitting and reading or something, or waiting in a line, the whole idea is that your experience teaches you. In this case, like, it teaches you that things come and go. Bad times come and go. Good times come and go. Luck comes and goes.
You better turn that down.
And so here's a great thing. It's like, okay, if experience provides that, then we should also build a skill of being able to always experience new things.
Yes.
And and so, look, real quick, this person that, or this general person that we're talking about, the one who just seems to be always content and doesn't really think about the future. That's maybe a good example of look, the less experience you have, maybe the less you are aware of what you are currently missing out on, or what you could be missing out on. And so, but you can't stop there. Like, I forget how, I said this before too, I forget how Sam Harris put it, but he's like, I'm not even going to try to paraphrase it, but the idea is this. It's like, you don't know what you could be you don't know what you're missing out on right now because you don't know it, but you know that there is something that you are missing out on right now. And it's like, do you spend the rest of your life in quiet desperation, like Thoreau said, the massive men lead lives of quiet desperation, or do you put yourself in that position? It's like you have to have it all. You have to know how to be content where you are. You have to look forward to the future, your fantasies, and then you also have to have an element to yourself where you are always willing to explore, go out into the unknown, because that's how you gather the information. You know, it's like because of our experiences, we can sit here and talk and not be bored because we know something's going to come up. Like eventually something's going to happen. You know, which is a huge part of it is done through personal choices. It's like, and maybe in 2 weeks,
intentional
intention. That's the thing too. So you gotta have your right intentions, set your intentions, and set goals that you take actions on. It's like, man, I'm telling you, it's like I think the thing is this: for the rest of our lives, you can't stop evolving. You can never become the person who's like, okay, I'm done. I'm just gonna do this for the rest of my life. It's like, well, why close yourself off like that? Like, why do that? Why not just like have that? It's like you're living in a house. It's like, don't lock all the doors. Like, keep doors open, because you're gonna at least create the possibility of going through it, you know? And so it's like we have to conduct our lives in a way where we always have that element of whatever the element is. We always have to keep open the possibility for future potential. And we're primarily talking about the things that you don't know of, like that you're not conscious of right now because it's never even entered into your life, but you're aware of that possibility. So keep that door wide open. Don't ever shut it, lock it, deadbolt it. And I think that's what people do when they give up on life. There's no hope for me. I'm just gonna like just be done. And then you see these people, you know, they're walking around and maybe they're the ones who do the same job that have like the ceilings like this high, and they're just sitting there like, I don't care, my bills are paid, and that's it. It's like, all right, man, but I mean, don't you want to? And this is I think this kind of like leads into the self-actualization, individuation process, like becoming your own person. Like, you gotta allow that. Like, why put any limitations? Here it is. Why put any limitations on any of your personal potential? Like, just keep all the doors open. Don't ever close anything off.
Yeah.
You know, it's like somebody's like, hey man, you should learn how to play the guitar or play an instrument. It's like, nah, I wouldn't have. Nah, it's like, well, why not just pick one up and try it? Like, just have that curiosity. You might really suck, but at least the person who has that positive outlook on it will play better than they would if they had a negative outlook. No matter what the level of talent, you know. So, I mean, I think that's a huge part of it. But then the question is like, well, how do you develop that?
Well, I mean, again, just like everything else in life, there's a very happy balance with that. I mean, man, there's a lot of problems with what you're saying. You know, there are a lot of potential negative outcomes from from that. Well, I mean, because everything that you do in life, you know, presents a problem, and you don't know what problems it's going to present until you go down that road. And so if you
can you apply that to like playing an instrument, or is that just too simple?
So, okay, now, I mean, let me go with a couple hypotheticals that are just completely, you know, off the top of my head. So you've got you've got Joe, who is very simple-minded. I mean, doesn't think about the future like we do. I'll say that.
I mean, they think about the future, but they're not.
Their future is like this. it's so hard to speak for somebody that we don't know their mind, but let's just say their future seems like this. It seems like their future on a day-to-day basis is, man, I wonder what's for dinner tonight. I have, my wife said she's making meatloaf. I love meatloaf. you know?
Yeah,
that, man, I can't wait for that. Oh,
Yeah.
Cops comes on at 8. You know? I went way back.
You're talking about some interesting
Dude.
people now.
Yeah.
Meatloaf and Cops.
Judge Judy's on it. A rerun. I TiVo Judge Judy.
It's like
Jerry Springer.
Meatloafs and Cops.
Yeah. So seriously though, right? Like that's relative.
This is Joe Dirt, right?
Joe. It's Deer Day. So you got Joe, and his future is, all right.
Not to pass any judgment, but
It's like what am I looking forward to when I get home? And then their secondary future is, like in a couple years, we're gonna have to. No, that's not even right. I was gonna say thinking about a new vehicle. Like thinking, oh, we'll have to get a new vehicle, but I bet you they don't. This Joe doesn't even think about that. So the secondary future for them is, let's take a fishing trip this year.
To the pond.
Well, I don't know, man. It's like whatever they have accessible. Maybe it's relative to us. Maybe it's a cabin in Hocking Hills. Like seriously.
yeah.
Like that's their future mindset.
I'm not laughing. It's just funny, but you're right, man. You're right.
Seriously,
Okay, and so
let's just say
So we're talking about the problem thing.
yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
So
So-
this person, their like the way they think about their future. It's not complex to say the least.
Yeah.
It's very basic.
And it is all relative.
Yeah.
Because the next person could think of the skiing trip in Switzerland, but
Yes.
that's still
I'm talking about
to
somebody
somebody else.
That's
That's just as funky as going to the lake next year. Because
it's all relative.
it's all
So
relative.
this person, Joe, encounters you in this podcast and is like, okay, I need to learn an instrument. And then they learn an instrument and finances become an issue. Like they really enjoy it.
Because they want to buy a guitar now.
Yeah, or they want to keep learning and lessons and all this. And then, like there's that tension. And then maybe they have to work more now to afford it. So now they're working more. And maybe they spend less time with their spouse. And I'm sure if I really wanted to, I could come up with.
And the whole world gets shattered because Joe wanted to learn how to play guitar.
Yes. So then Joe, on his way to a lesson, gets hit by a bus and he's paralyzed.
Well, man,
I'm just kidding about that one because that's dumb because you could do that.
But I get what you're saying. It's just like more. It's like this. It's like, well, why did the Bible say thou shalt, or the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want? I mean, I don't know what that means exactly, but it's like, okay, we could all agree that wanting can lead to a lot of headache.
It will.
Yeah, it will, especially if it doesn't go the way you want it to.
Well, even if it does, that's what that's the thing. Everything has its own problems. So you're going to have a headache getting what you want, and you're going to have a headache not getting what you want.
Then what if you set yourself up so that you're just going to be completely always expecting problems?
No,
but being able to set
yeah.
yourself up mentally where it's like you're not going to let it shatter your life.
Well, that's not a new idea. Isn't that exactly what we're trying to do? I mean, that's it. Life is not about trying to avoid as much stress as you can.
It almost seems like you should just bring on as much as you possibly can.
Dude, that's it, man. I mean, that's what life is about. It's not about avoiding tragedy. It's not about avoiding chaos. It's not about avoiding negative, as much as it is about being able to adapt to it and to care, like to keep your head up through it, you know? And like, man, like how do you act like Job? You know, Job in the Bible got everything taken from him. And it's like, how do you act when you're in the storm? You know, not when you get out of it and you're all excited and then you look back and you're like, man, I was a little, you know, bee and I acted crazy and I said things I wish I didn't say. But to be able to go through that storm and to say, okay, I don't know why this is happening, but it has something to do with me. You know, I'm going to take responsibility for it. And I think that is the key to life, is taking responsibility and to not try to avoid any problems. And there's, you know, there's a lot that I said that could be taken the wrong way, right? Like, you should avoid negative energy, negative people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm saying, like, the goal of life is not to get out unscarred, you know? It's like the Bible says, James says, count it all joy when you face trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness.
When you face trials.
Yeah.
Not if.
Yeah.
When you face
there
trials.
Are so many scriptures, relatively speaking, that touch on the idea of being content in your current situation.
Yes.
And I guess maybe
you have to.
Maybe the hang up is what content means, because content doesn't mean
happiness,
satisfied necessarily, or happy, or this is it.
I honestly think that it means that, and this goes into like God. It's you have to have your foundation laid on something that is immovable and unshatterable.
Jesus
so
Christ.
Like, if you okay, it's like this, man. It's like people whose lives get shattered because of facing chaos and not coming out of it, is because their foundations were, whatever they were anchored to, shattered.
Yes, I'm looking up scripture. Go ahead.
I mean, that's the answer. I mean, look, we already know the answer. It's where does your faith lie? What are you assigning value to?
Yeah.
And it all just comes back to the one thing that is unbreakable, unshatterable, unmovable, which is God. That's what it is. And we start to cling to certain things, and it always just seems so cultural. It's so like, who decided, what was in charge of the fact that, like, right now there seems to be this like global group think that, like, this thing has value. And it's like, what is it, man? Everybody every day gets up and there's like rushing out. It's like right now we're in this and I guess it's just as what feels to me, because who knows, maybe there's somebody in Vietnam or in Thailand right now who doesn't think like this at all. I don't know, but it seems like the world is in this, we're in a state of rush right now. It's just like, I mean, man, you jump on the freeway now and you're driving, and it's like the average speed limit is 80 miles an hour. You know, you're driving, you're keeping up with traffic, you look down, you're going 80, 85 miles an hour. You drop down to 65, the speed limit, people are flying by you. And it's like, and people are swerving left and right, and it just seems to get a little more, it's organized, but it's very fast. And I noticed that people get much more agitated lately. People get much more agitated when things don't go their way. Yep. Something as simple as someone in front of you is driving a little too slow. It's like, get out of my way. I got to go around you, and I got to get to where I'm going, and the whole world's in my way because my goal's there, and there's a bunch of obstacles, and it's everybody, you know.
Yeah.
And So I feel like right now, because of tech, because of our rapid advancement and all these industries that um, because we're getting like pushed by this wave, this rush, that we're clinging to things that we think give us that are our foundation. And sometimes that's just an idea of our future self. It's like, my future self is who I need to be. And why is that? And why is that my goal? Well, because I watch a heck of a lot of social media, and all the happy people are doing this. So
Yep.
I need to get there because I need to be like them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's an illusion. There's some truth to, there's definitely, you want standards, you want a goal to work towards, but dude, again, we're very, very, very complicated. And at the end of the day, me, we have to all become our own person. And that's what the individuation process is. It's not like achieving the most success, the most goals. That's not what that is. It's much more richer and deeper than that.
Yeah.
So, and I think it just takes a lifetime. You get better at it every day, but your world's gonna be very hellish if you're not working at it every day. I feel like if you are that person who's just like, whatever, man, like, I don't mean the person who's content. I'm talking about the person who is like, kind of gave up on themselves. They're kind of just like, I'm not gonna like try to become a better person tomorrow. I'm just gonna be me. And let the day unfold, and that's it. It's like, yeah, there's good in that too, but I guess I'm speaking more towards the person who feels like the world is full of obstacles and they're just doomed.
Mm-hmm.
They might be positive. They're not gonna go cry in a corner or blow their head off, but like, it's like deep down on the subconscious level, they've already admitted to themselves that
Defeat.
Defeat. But like I said, not in that like horrible way. They're still gonna enjoy life and go about their day and be a good citizen and all that.
I think the one thing I'm hearing from you that hasn't been spoken is that the person that you're talking about has great potential.
Well, I think we all do.
To do something. Well, no, they're aware of their great potential. And the value of it. Like, be a productive member to society, like, be a productive member to society and better it in any way that you can. And so that person knows that their potential will better, whoever, and the world's against them or whatever. And it's just too hard. And they're just like,
Yeah.
like, man, like is it who something Bell that invented the phone? Graham, was it?
Who was it? It was
was it two names? Something Bell?
Yeah.
Andrew Grant or
Andrew Dice Clay. Benjamin
anyway,
Bell?
but you think what?
Something Benjamin Bell?
No. Bob Proctor talks about it,
Bob Proctor invented it.
when he's like,
Yeah, it wasn't Edison. It was Graham Bell. Something
no,
Graham
it wasn't
Bell.
Graham. Anyway,
Yeah, it was Graham Bell.
no,
Are you talking about light bulb?
no,
What'd you say?
the phone. So
Who invented the phone? Who invented the phone? Oh gosh.
dang. Well, anyway, you think about that. Like, you have an idea to better the world, or at least you think, and then
A person does, right?
yeah, well,
Yeah.
the person that you're talking about that is aware of their potential,
Yeah.
and then they're like, well, that's just too much, man. Like, I'm just gonna just work my day job.
Alexander Graham Bell.
There we go.
Graham Bell.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so you're talking about the person who knows they have potential and all this stuff, and then they've
Given up.
They've given up.
Yeah.
Maybe for whatever
Well, I'm
reason.
talking about your person. You keep bringing up somebody that, you're-
No, it wasn't anybody specific.
I know. You're generalizing, and it's this, you're generalizing, you're saying, well, shame on you basically for not
I'm
going
not.
after more.
I'm not saying shame on them.
Well, it's a negative. Like,
Yeah, but
however you would
it's
say
not
it.
like I'm criticizing. I mean, it comes off as criticism. I'm just drawing out. This is how a person could be. This is how probably a lot of people are conducting their lives right now.
Mm-hmm.
In that mindset. You know, and that's it. I mean, that's one of many though. So,
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. Back to building your identity, I guess, on a foundation of rock, or building your values on a foundation of rock instead of something that's going to crumble and shake and break and fall down. Like it just reminded me of the scripture in Matthew 7:24. And it's funny because I think I've actually read this on the podcast, but it says, "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and when the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash." So, who's the rock? What's the rock? What's the house? What's the rain? And it's this metaphor. What's the teaching? What's the words of mine? And it's the teachings of Jesus Christ. And the rock is, him and those teachings. And then the storms, just the problems of life.
right.
And man, it's so true. Like when you have values that, or not values, but when you value things that are here today and gone tomorrow, like
The external world.
yeah, it's gonna crumble.
Well, gosh, see, that's the beautiful part, man. I was actually one of the So Now Up booklets that I
Mm-hmm.
was writing. I think there's a little story in there. It was interesting. I played a little. It was like a little fun thought experiment where you're taken away to a planet. You're taken off of Earth right now. Somebody grabs you. Is this entity? Is this being? And it takes you a planet that's about this size. If you were to round off this room into a sphere, that's the size of the planet, and you're on it. And it's like, then this being that took you there, goes and stands like, I don't know, 50 feet away. Just probably far enough to where you can only see his like his shoulders and up. It's just standing there, and it's just looking the opposite direction, like maybe out towards space. And you're on this thing, and it's like, okay, what do you do? Like, what do you do now? And you observe the universe. You see space. There's stars. But maybe you see planets. Maybe there's suns way out there. And let's just say it's warm, so you're not worried about freezing or anything. And it's like, well, what do you do? And it was fun to sit there and really ponder. Like, you kind of think about like, okay, well, when am I going to get taken off this and go back to my home? And then I think he even asked the being that took him there, and the being's not answering purposely. It's giving him the cold shoulder, so that the person can sit there and come up with these answers. And so it's actually fun to try to do that, because you kind of what it does is it really starts to make a list of priorities, maybe priorities that you didn't know were a priority. You sit there and say, okay, what would you do? It's like you sit there, well, it's like, okay, maybe you go build a shelter. There's woods or something, and you grab something, you build it. Maybe you take a nap for a little bit, and then you wake up. It's like, well, what do you do now? And it's great because it's like, what we do here on Earth seems like it's always a response to an external event, like constantly. especially when you're an adult and you're living adult life. It's like everything you do is a reaction to an external event. And but when you're on this planet and you kind of have like kind of free reign, your things start to change. And it's actually really fun to start thinking about, like to actually sit down and write what would you do. And it's like, man, you're left totally up to your imagination. And so what do you do? Like maybe play with that for 3 minutes. Like think out loud. An entity brings you to this planet in space. You know, you're going away from Earth. Earth is down there. And maybe you can see Earth like very small, almost like maybe, let's just say it's half the size of a full moon, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Just so it's not so huge that you're just pondering it all the time, but you're kind of left up to your own mind and thinking. It's like, what would you do?
I mean, I don't know. What would I do? That's a problem that
I mean,
future Tom has to deal with.
You'd probably explore, right?
That would be the first thing I would do, you know?
Explore the planet.
Yeah, all 30 square yards of it.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I would be really curious to know how the weather changes per day, night, etc. Like, do I need shelter? What type? And
so again, you're
food, survival.
You're responding to external circumstances.
Well, yeah, I would say survival would be the.
Well, here's what gets really cool, is that you get to the point where you stop externalizing and then you start internalizing, and that's where it gets really fun. 3 minutes is not enough time, but if you had to sit there and write 20 pages of what you think you do, eventually things start to internalize. And here's where that gets interesting, because the internal world is just as big as the universe. So it's like you wouldn't even know where to go yet, because you haven't explored that space yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Thoreau who said, turn your inner eye inward more, or something like that, because there you'll find a universe that's you've never explored. Very bad paraphrasing, but it goes along those lines. And that's a real thing. That's not fake. Because the whole idea behind being on a planet is you're not being impeded by the worldly problems that we always find ourselves in. You know, it's like, look, if you don't have a problem, it won't be long before you go find one. And
one finds you. Or
one finds you. So we can just compile these problems one after another. And it's almost as if people just love to compile. I remember we just said it 10 minutes ago, where it's like, well, what would you do? Well, take on as much responsibility as possible. So what's that really mean? It's like, well, just bring out a bunch of responsibility on yourself so that you're always occupied and fixing something. It's like, well, yeah, that is noble. And even Jordan Peterson talks about that. It's like, take on a bunch of responsibility. I think that's one of his major conclusions to what life is about.
Yeah.
It's not about happiness. It's not about all the joyful things that we think that we want. It's take on a lot of responsibility, like bear your load of others, bear your load of your community. And if you're lucky enough, you'll be able to bear the load of hundreds of thousands of people, you know, whatever that means, you know, like starting a company or who knows, being a political leader or something. So it's like and so we find ourselves in all these problems and stuff. But when you internalize, because you said, and this, I had the same thought too. It's like you're on this planet. One thing you do is you just start to explore. You're going to explore the terrain that you can traverse physically. Mm-hmm. But it's like, okay, but you're very limited. It's not going to be long before you're going to know every inch of that space that you're on, or ball that you're on. And so it's like, okay, well, what does internal exploration look like? And it works the best on this planet because there's nothing bothering you.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing pulling at you saying, hey, you need to do this, hey, you need to do that. It's like, imagine you built your shelter. Let's just say there's like plants that have fruit that are regenerating at a rate that you couldn't eat at all, you know. So it's always going to be there. Let's just say you got to go harvest it. And we live in that world. It's like, oh, that's fantasy thinking. It's not, because look, we're already provided with food. We're provided with fruits and herbs or plants that we can eat, right? So that's not a fantasy. That's real. That's a miracle. And that's provided to us, which is amazing, right? So you have that. So now you're on this tiny little planet. Your shelter, your food's taken care of. You've explored everything. It's not going to be too quick before you invent the computer so you can get on the internet. So you're probably like, okay, well, I'm going to forget that idea for now.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well, now I have to explore internally. It's like, okay, well, Carl Jung talked about you have to get good at the skill of dissecting your dreams and identifying what these things mean. And because he says his dreams are all filled with just archetypes, and so it's like, how do you analyze and decide what the archetypes represent? Well, it's like, okay, you get good at something like that. What about exploring the internal world? How do you go about it? Like, how do you get the right hiking shoes? How do you get the backpack? How do you start going internally? We don't do that because we're so focused on the external world. It's like we're constantly being fed with stimuli that let me look at our phones. We can spend hours on our phones. Our phones is an entire universe, but it's external for the most part.
Yeah.
It's an external thing, and we're always looking at other folks.
Well, what about like monks, and,
Exactly, yeah.
That just spend most of their time meditating.
Sure,
and,
right. But see, here's the thing too. It's like, but isn't there like a religion now to like monkhood? It's like, look at the Dalai Lama. I mean, is that guy really like a monk, or is he just like a kind of like a what would you call it, a spokesman for a monkhood in a capitalist society? I mean, the Dalai Lama has a Twitter account. Like, that's not very like
Dolly.
or llama.
No, it's definitely not llama. It's borderline Dolly, but not llama. Son of a.
But look at that. It's like, so it's fake. It's like he fell into the capital, and I've never met the guy. I mean, I've heard him in interviews, and I'm just like, he doesn't seem like a freaking saint to me, or an extremely enlightened individual. But he's not supposed to be. The Dalai Lama is actually a title that passes down. I don't know how. I don't think it's like family lineage. I don't know how you become the Dalai Lama. But it's like the Pope. It's like, who's gonna be Pope now? It's like, well, let's get that guy to go in, and we'll all vote for him, and smoke will come out of the thing, or whatever they do. It's like, now it's like, I have to now play the part that is expected of this part from society. It's like, I don't even get to be my own person. I'm gonna play a role now. It's like the president, And Jordan Peterson said this. He's like, we are attached to the idea of the president. He's like, you can keep interchange the presidents, and we do every 4 years. It's either the same one for another term, or we get another guy in there, and it's like, who cares really? But we want a president because it's not the person; it's the idea.
Yeah.
So that's that's a whole thing. But anyway, internal exploration. How do you do it, and where does it go? And I think that is I think huge. And man, if you can do this, I would love to see what you come up with if you were to sit down and just say, write 20 pages on your thought process on being on the planet. Like, I'd love to see what comes out. Because you can't write down like your memory of Earth, because that like, you're gonna do that, and it's gonna get old. It's like, we already know your memories on Earth. Like, everybody's gonna think that, but it's like, where are you gonna go that somebody else is gonna be like, oh, I want to go there too, man. Like, that's interesting. But you don't know until you sit and do it, which will require a couple hours a day for who knows how long,
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure how we got there, but I think
we got there. That led into from you reading the Rock, God being your foundation, and so it's like, and I guess I was thinking like, okay, things fall apart. The world falls apart. There's volcanoes, there's earthquakes. It takes away things. Things just get wiped out. But what still remains? Well, that's the rock. That's the foundation you build on. God, Jesus, however you can like visualize that. It's the indestructible. So, and it has to be in a place that is not of this world. It has to be. And I think, how do we access that? Well, probably just internally.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everything you're saying, it doesn't seem like that far from this path that we're on as far as self actualization, to look inward. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what,
Yeah, and you have to know what self-actualization means, because to one person it can mean like, oh, becoming a rock star, man, like fulfilling all of your dreams. But like to you, what is self-actualization? What is the individuation process, or what is it to become an individuated person in your thinking?
I mean, for me personally, I think it has a lot to do with knowing yourself the best you can. I mean, I think that's at the core.
Yeah.
And you can't do that until you, internalize. Like,
Yeah, like to the deepest you possibly can.
yeah. I mean, and to go out and ask people, and find out how they view you and see you, and make sure your reality is lined up with reality. But once you have a grip on that, you're never going to get you're probably not going to get to the point where you don't need to do it anymore, right? You're going to have to continually do this. But when you get to a point where you feel confident that you have the nuts and bolts of who you are, then it's this idea of, what don't I like about who I am? What do I like? How can I make what I like better? And how can I, take care of what I don't like by getting stronger, more disciplined, etc., to not do those things. And then the third thing which is probably the third thing would be becoming content with the things that you can't change, or the bad things, the things that you don't like about yourself, and saying, well, that's, for right now, that's who I am, and I'm going to work on bettering myself to become the best that I can become, and then to be aware of all the goods and the bads, the potential, the like the skills that you don't have, like for me in the remodeling industry, like I am not good. I have very little administrative skills. So, if I'm internalizing and I say, okay, I recognize I don't have great, like, administration isn't my gift set. It's not my default. So do I want to put a lot of energy, time, effort, resources into getting my administrative skills to the place where I would like them to be? Or do I rely on other people for those and incorporate those in my business? And so you do that, I was talking about my business, but you do that with your own self, and you say, okay, well, what strengths do I have that I want to make better? What weaknesses do I have that I want to make better, or just stay and be content with them?
Well, do you believe that, and this is exactly how I'm going to ask this question, do you believe that, what I'm saying is I'm choosing my words very carefully here, because I think that these are the key words. Do you believe that you can become a very good administrative person?
Yeah, absolutely. But at a cost, so.
What's the cost?
Well, time and energy and effort and resources. So you have to take those from something else. You have to take that.
Why can't you just add it?
Well, you don't have that. That you only have so much time.
Oh, you mean literally, like, when you're doing administration, that's less time you can be on the field.
When you're working on administration, no, I'm talking about just working on it.
Yeah, when you're working on it.
If I'm working on it, that's going to take time.
From you being physically on a job, doing something.
Anything.
Anything.
Anything. It could be the time that I'm working on making administrative better is time that I'm not working on
Whatever else.
making something good great. And so you have to decide, is it more valuable for me
Yeah.
to work on this? Well, man, I can do really well
Sure. Yeah.
and not have but if I'm like rude and a jerk and perceived as this and this and this, that's something that I should work on, you know, and
Yeah.
shouldn't just say, well, screw it, deal with it. So anyway, does that answer your question about what does that mean to me? Like self-actualization.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It is a loaded question, and especially if, what is the real answer to it? You know. But I think you said it best, and I think you said it best when you said it's like know yourself. Know yourself as best as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And one thing that I thought about when you said that is when you internalize, when you go within and you start to know yourself. I've had this vision of like you're going down a corridor, and as you're going down the corridor, let's just you see doors, and let's just say forget that there's a room there, but each door represents a quality of yourself. Like here's the funny side of Tom. Here's the Tom that is not good at administration or doesn't like it. Here's Tom, and there's thousands of doors, and let's just say the corridor is a big sphere, and there's doors aligning all around. And so what I was visioning is, as you're traveling and you're traveling down the corridor, and you're going internally, so it kind of creates the illusion that you're like going within, like you're going toward the core of yourself, whatever the core is. But the idea is that your awareness looking at characteristics of yourself. And so the question that I had was like, well, what is the thing that's observing you? Like your qualities, because when you're just living life, you think that your qualities are you. It's like, this is my personality. Oh, this is just who I am. And it's like, but if you can internalize and look at yourself and look at the qualities, the good and the bad, as like these separate little things, well then what is the thing, like the pure conscious awareness that's observing this? And that kind of like blew my mind, because it's like, it's if the thing can be detached looking at you, the different characteristics, then it's like the characteristics is just like a thing, but that's not really you. It's kind of like a thing you've just adopted that you think is you. And that's as far as I went.
Well, yeah, I think
that,
the
and
two
it's
are interdependent of each other, you know? Like that's not who you are.
My friend explained a computer, the way a computer works to me. I don't know nothing about computers, but I was like he's like, oh, you need a bigger processor. And I was like, can you explain to me like how that works? And he kind of gave me a good idea. And he was like, okay, well, let's just say your processor is this table, and you get a program, and you get a program, and then you put it, and then like you have your program open on your processor, and then you open up another program, until your table's filled. And it's like, once your table gets filled, like you can't put anything else. You have to close a program. And so I thought like, and now after you said that and thinking about the whole tunnel thing, it's like when we take these things that we think are our like character traits, and they are like by default, but it's like we take that character trait and we put it on the table, and then that's who we are at the moment, but we can put it back. And so I'm thinking like it seems like we have these set of traits, kind of like when you buy a computer, how it already has programs downloaded on it. Well, these things, these character traits that we have, yeah, they're like our personality, and that's, I think, what we identify with. But if we never take it off the table and replace it with something else, they'll always be there, and that's what we continually identify with. So if it's something like, I'm not a good administrator, I'm not good at administration, I'm not a good musician, I'm not this and that and that like that. If you keep saying that to yourself, then then that just constantly becomes your personality, and that's how you constantly behave.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wondering, is there this thing that can allow us to replace these things that we don't think we're good at or think that we're good at, and so on and so forth, that makes up our personality and our character, and that ultimately just that makes up our experience on this earth. It's like, I think that is a big part of being that person who kind of like you said, is full of potential, but they gave up on it. It's like, and I'm using that as example because it's just clear. It's like the administration thing. You know you can become good at it, but you don't because there's another something that seems to be more valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, okay, now you can play the game even further. It's like, well, how about replacing what you think is the most valuable with something else that's very valuable? Like, you can interchange that.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't, Some people do. And so I think, man, I think like maybe there's just a bunch of potential that's available to us, but we prohibit from reaching these potentials because of all the stuff that we put on ourselves that, like the responsibility stuff, like, and I don't mean like responsibility, like, oh, be irresponsible and just be a loser, and create problems, but it's like differently in a positive way.
Yeah, I get it. Mm-hmm.
So
no, I think you're. Go ahead.
I'm just I'm done. I'm just saying it's just an incredible. It's just incredible to think about it, to like even start to ponder it.
Yeah, I agree. This is the last thing I'll say because it's late. I think that's exactly what we do every day, and the computer thing, the processor, is a great analogy because in order to take administrative and put it on the table to be processed, you'd have to take something on the table off, of the processor. And you couple that idea with responsibility and then survival, and now you've got just a really complex situation to work with, because when you're focused on survival, it's almost like the table is not even the process is not even there. Yeah, because I think that deals with consciousness, So, I mean, when you're in survival mode, you focus on surviving. You don't focus on your administrative skills or your social skills. You do the bare minimum or whatever is needed in order to get through. So,
yeah.
So I think that's a key, is to not be in survival mode so that you can work on those things.
And I think it's interesting you said survival mode, because like I thought, let's just say evolution is a fact, let's just say there's nothing beyond that, which I definitely think there is for sure. But let's just say, for example, at one point when we were all let's just say cavemen, I'm picturing the caveman who has a cave and is running out to go grab something to eat, and he's a caveman is in survival mode, constantly watching out for predators. And let's just say he's not part of a tribe. Like that's tribalism. That came later, but let's just talk about the caveman. You're walking around the wilderness, and you club a snake because he was right there, and you killed it, and you're like, okay, I'm cool. You kill something and you eat it, or you pick a plant, fruit or whatever, and then it's not like that is 24/7 constant. There had to have been a time where the caveman stopped and pondered for a second, or had moments of relaxation, let's just say, where it was like, I'm full, there's no animals getting ready to kill me. Like, I can sit here for a second. It's like, huh, like, can you imagine, like, at what point in the evolutionary process was there downtime? Like, the molecule, let's just say, the single-celled organism was just always like it wasn't even programmed to ponder. It's just like, it just is always in a state of doing whatever it's made to do, you know? And then eventually in the evolutionary process there was a molecule that just sat there and was like, yo guys, what are we doing here, man?
Yeah. Let's branch into
You know what
two.
I'm saying? It's like, seriously, it's like, you guys, you know what? Is anybody here tired of just constantly doing what we're doing? Like, anybody got any objections to this? You know? And everybody's like, what do you mean, man?
Yeah.
So, but in all seriousness, like, at what point in the evolutionary process was there that moment where the organism, the single cell, whatever it was, could sit there and reflect, or or even just relax? It doesn't have to think. It could just sit there and at least be aware of the fact that it's not in pure survival mode. Like, it's got a little bit of downtime. And what I want to know is, when did that occur and why? Why not always be in a state of 100% pure survival mode where there is no pondering or contemplating or having a good time? It's just constantly, because you look at nature, man, and it's like you look at us. Gosh, I mean, I'm trying to think of a creature or something that just can never relax. You know, what would it be? A fly? I don't know. Flies look like they hang out sometimes. You know, when it like cleans its wings or something.
Yeah.
It's like, who has the time to clean its wings when you're in a world where it's just constant hell and chaos?
I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, I don't even know where it would go, but I can't imagine that as any species.
Yeah, it's like, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, how far back do you go? Because when you think of like the theory of the Big Bang, where it's like, it's like nature is all business. You know, like you gotta think the Big Bang. You know, and that is a very popular and very broadly accepted theory of how the universe began. That it started at some very, 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 very dense point in time and space, that just something happened where it blew up, and out of all this, everything, because of a result of that, this is existing right now. So, okay, so you have that, and it's like, when you look at nature from that perspective, it's like nature never has time to screw off. It never has time to be like, oh, bad idea, guys. Let's do that again. You know, or hey, I got a better idea. You know, it's always just like cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. And it's like, well, where in that point was it like the fact that we can sit there and scratch our butts and be like, hey man, what do you want to do today? You want to play some basketball? Like, when did that happen? And then why? Like, why did nature have it built into its just incredibly complex structure that there was going to be a moment where a conscious thing could sit there and ponder the nature of itself? Or better yet, just be bored for a couple hours. Like, I don't get that. I don't get where that's written in. I don't get how that gets, I don't get how that just it manifests into a reality.
Yeah, with evolution, I'm not sure. But anyway.
Yeah, exactly. With evolution, I'm not sure. But anyway, the whole idea is like, look, we can internalize.
Yeah.
And that's the miracle, man. Like
Yeah.
And I'll go back to Jung when he was like, the man who is internal is just as well based as the internal man. Like, that means so much. That's one sentence, but it means so much. It's like when Thoreau said, if you built for yourself castles in the sky, your work need not be lost. Now go build foundations underneath them. It's like, he's talking about the internal process. You know, I mean, he's talking about manifesting it maybe to in physical form, but what if Thoreau didn't mean physically? What if he still meant internally? So then what does that mean if that's the fact? Like, if he said, build for yourself castles in the sky, like internally, fantasy, and now build foundations underneath them, well, what if he still meant internally? And if he did, well, then what does that mean? And so that almost means like build, and dude, okay, look, it almost means like build for yourself the castles in your sky, in the sky, build foundations underneath them. That almost seems to me, if he's speaking of the internal, that seems to me like build for yourself your castles in places that won't be destructed, that can't be destructed. And I think that goes exactly the same when Christ says, build for yourselves treasures in heaven, or store up for yourself treasures in heaven, where moth doesn't destroy, rust doesn't decay, and where thieves don't break in and steal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the scientists, the secular scientists would say, well, that's just all like in the mind. But you got to think, well, where does the mind transcend into? There's got to be this place, this space, and maybe it's heaven, who knows, or something akin to it, where it's like what you build there doesn't get destroyed. And so, I mean, it's just a whole thing. But you can't explore that world until you internalize, and you got to be very focused at it, and for long periods of time. And that's that. Internalization, conceptualization.
All right. Well, anything else?
Yeah, so Carl Jung. No, that's it, man. We've been talking for an hour and 40 minutes, but I think it's good. It's been a while since we had a platform discussion. But look, man, maybe we probably won't do it. I would love to do it, but gosh, maybe on the next platform we can have a piece of paper where we internalize for a good amount of time and just see what we came up with, man.
Yep.
It won't happen, but you try it. Anyway.
Well,
when's going to be the next platform? A couple weeks?
No, next week.
All right.
Next week.
Yeah, it's been a while. Gosh, it has to have been more, 6 weeks since we've done this? 8 weeks?
I don't know.
Seems like a while, but anyway.
Let's keep it weekly. All right. We'll see you next time.
See you.
Later. Did you hit record? Nope.